Prince George is one of the greatest places to live on this planet. It has everything that you could possibly want. You're surrounded by nature. It's a great community, and community is the key word.
Correct.
It's a community of entrepreneurs, hardworking people.
Yeah.
I find the attitude of people in Prince George to be supportive in what I do.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm doing in retirement now is doing a lot of pro bono work for people who want to be a developer, people who may have 10 acres and want to learn how to subdivide or build a house.
Yeah.
I offer them free advice, I meet with
Very
them,
rewarding,
help them.
right?
Oh, it's great, to see their enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that are watching us from around the world, we know where Canada is, we know where British Columbia is. Where is Prince George? Well, it's about 500 miles or 800 kilometers north of Vancouver. Today, a very special day. We have a very special guest. His name is David McWalter. I've known him for more than 30 years. He is from the Prince George area. He's a professional engineer and has been very, very involved in a whole number of things in BC, northern BC in particular. Originates from Scotland, so he's going to tell us all about his life here, and how we have known each other. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What an introduction. That was amazing. Good job.
Well, thank you.
We've been friends, you're right, for 35 years now. And it's a friendship that's lasted that length of time. We're still talking to each other, which is a good sign. And I look towards you as not just a friend, but also as a mentor in lots of ways. You're 10 years my senior without divulging any ages. And I want to be like you 10 years from now.
I like that, but he's saying now, David is interesting because he was born in 1940, and so am I.
1950.
Yeah. And you were born what month?
1950. November, yes.
November 1950.
50.
So, and so that's David. So tell us about, you were born in Scotland, Edinburgh?
Dundee, just north of Edinburgh, yes.
Okay. And so, tell us about your background. Now, I know your family well. You have 4 children. We'll talk about that a little bit later, what the names are. But I know in particularly Maggie, who is your wife, who I've also known for well in excess of 30 years. And so, you met her at high school sweethearts and wandered around the world with her and then ended up here. So tell us about your background. And
you're right about Maggie. She is definitely the rock of our family now. When I met her, we were still in high school, grade 12. And she was a big prize back in those days because Maggie was the school captain of this very prestigious school that we went to. And going out with her, big deal.
Right.
But we were married after our university careers, both of us. And then from there, we both got jobs working in the city of our birth, which was Dundee in Scotland. And we were settled. We had, quite quickly, we had 1 daughter living in Scotland. But Scotland was a country in transition. It was very slow back in those days.
What year?
This was around about 1973 when we were married and started our careers. Maggie as a teacher and myself as an engineer.
Right.
But there was always, in my mind, something else out there for us, not necessarily in Scotland.
Now, was your plan always to become a professional engineer, or did something else happen that you had dreamed of and all of a sudden something happened and put you in a different direction?
I always wanted to be a dentist.
Oh, that's kind of an engineer. No, okay,
so,
tell us about it.
An engineer of teeth. My uncle back in those days was a dentist, and I admired him greatly. But we went through high school. I had this affinity for math and science and engineering at high school.
Yeah.
And so one of my friends said, let's go to university in Edinburgh. Let's do the engineering course. I said, great, sign me up. And that was it, without a second thought about being a dentist. So we became engineers, both of us. I worked for the Dundee City Engineers Department. So again, I was getting in a bit of a rut, even at that early days.
Yeah.
Dundee born, Dundee High School,
Right.
Dundee University, Dundee employment, working for the City Engineers Department in Dundee. And I thought, there's got to be something else in the world. So on a whim, a friend of mine had gone to Jamaica as a teacher.
How old were you then?
I would be 24 in those
Still
days.
fairly young.
Fairly
right?
young, a couple of
Yeah.
years behind me working in an engineer's department. So I applied for a job in Jamaica. I went down to the Jamaican
Why?
embassy.
Why Jamaica?
Why not? It was just someplace that was not Dundee. It was Scotland's greatest export is its people.
Yeah.
There's 5 million people living in Scotland, and there's 5 million Scottish people living elsewhere in the world.
And a lot of them in North America, actually.
That's right, yeah. So Jamaica came up. I was offered a couple of jobs.
Yeah.
One there with the National Water Authority, which was the job that I took. And I was working on some very large projects, United Nations project, World Bank projects. But the projects I enjoyed most were going to little villages in the outside of Kingston and outside of Montego Bay.
Which is the capital of Jamaica. Yeah.
And developing water systems for people, villages that had no water. So it's great having a degree in engineering, but with 4 years of school and 2 years working as an engineer, you're still a rookie. You don't know very much.
No.
But you go to Jamaica, and because you're white and you have that university degree, they expect you to know everything.
Yeah.
And truly you don't.
No.
It was a baptism of fire. You had to be very innovative.
Yeah.
And I credit my life experiences to my 4 years in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Where you were thrown into the deep end. This village doesn't have a water system.
It's a crisis.
Create a water system. And Jamaica is a fairly dry place in the Caribbean, does not get a lot of rain. So you look at this village and you think, how are you going to provide them with water? Do you drill a well or dam a river? Or
Where is the water, right? How deep or what?
So again, you have to be innovative.
Right.
Living in there for a while and thinking about this village every evening, just because of the convection currents, the wind blows in from the ocean every evening, hits the hills on the northern side of Jamaica, and as soon as it hits the mountains, it rains every night.
Oh.
And I thought, there must be some way of capturing that rainfall.
Right.
So we actually made out of concrete, we built a catchment area on the side of a mountain.
Okay.
We dressed took down all the trees, we replaced the topsoil with concrete, and at the bottom we had a curb, a gutter if you like, and we collected rainwater every night when it dropped onto this mountain.
Right.
And then the next challenge was, well, how do we get water to the people?
Right.
So we actually then, using a system of bamboo pipes, because they couldn't...
How big is... this was in the area of Kingston?
This was northern Jamaica, so more closer to Montego Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, using innovative systems like bamboo pipes instead of plastic pipes or concrete pipes.
Right.
But we got my water system. But it was primitive. The reservoir we had a drip system from the reservoir into the pipes, and the drips went through a chlorine basin basically to chlorinate the water. But it worked, and people were happy.
So how long were you in Jamaica?
I was there for 4 years.
Okay.
My eldest son was born in Jamaica, so when he tells people he's Jamaican, they look at him and he's white like me and looks nothing like a Jamaican would look like. So it's a great story.
Yeah.
But it was a good 4 years and great training for what was to become my engineering profession in later life.
Right.
But the key in Jamaica was meeting engineers from the World Bank, really experienced people who had been around the world doing engineering projects. And in one of those conversations, they said, why don't you come to Canada when your contract is finished? So I did that, not knowing what Canada was, had never been here before.
Yeah.
And the head
Canada is a big country.
Oh, yes.
And the likelihood is Ontario, Quebec are then the most populated areas, but that's not where you want.
No, I went for my interview in Kamloops, which is the head office of this engineering company that I was referred to.
That is just in between Vancouver and Prince George, a little bit more to the east. But Kamloops is a fairly large city.
It was a large city, and I came to Kamloops on a hot July summer day, and it was 95 degrees. And I'm thinking, this is great. This is just like Jamaica.
Yeah.
So they offered me a job, and then they got talking about the location of the job, and they said, well, the job's not actually in Kamloops, it's in Prince George. So they hauled out this atlas, this map, and Prince George was about 2 inches further north than Kamloops. And I thought, beautiful day, what difference can 2 inches make?
Yeah. Do it on the bike, right?
Yeah, right. So I went back to Scotland, organized my travel to Canada, told my young family that we were moving to Canada to give that a try. They were very supportive. We came back in late fall
Of
1975, that would be.
yeah.
So, 1978.
Yeah.
So we came back to Kamloops. I came first, my family and Maggie came later. But I came, and the first place to ship me out to was Burns Lake. So I went to Burns Lake.
Burns Lake is about an hour and a half from here, about 150 kilometers maybe,
that's right.
going west of
Fairly
Burns Lake.
small village, and my job there was to build an airstrip, the Baker Field.
I landed on that.
You have? Yeah. Oh, yes. So anyway, so it's now paved. But it was an interesting job, but it took 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And in that 6 weeks, because I was there on my own, my family had not arrived yet.
Yeah.
That was the only time I'd ever considered, this is a mistake. I'm moving back to Scotland or Jamaica.
Yeah.
But I stuck it out, and that was the best decision I ever made. Canada has been good for me.
Yeah.
Prince George has been good for me.
Yeah.
I came back from Burns Lake, and very quickly I was part of the design team that designed and developed Tumbler Ridge, which at that time...
You were still based in Kamloops then? Or?
No, I was in Prince George at this time. I was moved to Prince George. My family had joined me.
Okay. So now you were in Prince George. Now it was 1978?
Yes.
And so now the other things that happened during that period, I started my business here. I came here in 1965, in July of 65, and started my company, got incorporated July of 1975. It was a boom year in a way for coal and a number of other developments. And what the reference that you're making is a major coal development, again, somewhat northeast of Prince George.
Yes.
How far away from here would you say by road?
What, 300 kilometers over the mountains? Yeah.
Yeah, away from here. Major coal development. They built major infrastructure, including railroad to Tumbler Ridge. And the whole, it was barren land other than for coal. And now they had to develop a major city, all the infrastructure around it, all the railroads and all the other things. So it was a major project.
Yeah, it became a city of 5,000 to 6,000 people, and everything was built from scratch. Water systems, sewer systems,
Nothing was
subdivisions, town centre, town hall, airfields, the industrial parks. So I was very busy with Tumbler Ridge. So
Are you now working still independently, or you worked with the company?
I was
from
still working
Kamloops?
for the company that hired me.
Okay.
And because I was so busy, I totally missed the recession in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Frantically busy. We had a staff of 40 people in our Prince George office.
Yeah.
And then 1985 came along. The town site was finished. And then it was like a wake-up call. The recession was here in full bore. And suddenly our office went from 40 people to 3 people. Oof. And the company that I was working for decided to close their office in Prince George because Tumbler Ridge was now completed.
Yeah.
They offered me a job in Vancouver. But at that time I was so connected with Prince George. My kids were in soccer, enjoying it. I was part of the community. My clients were in Prince George.
Yeah.
And it was that point I thought, thank you, the company that hired me. It's time for me to go on my own, stay in Prince George and build a business. So that was 1985.
So the company that you then started
was a company called L&M Engineering.
Yeah, standing for?
Just the names, the initials of the 3 principals of the company. We fairly quickly became L&M Engineering when the K dropped out
Right.
and retired. And since that time, L&M has become the predominant engineering company in not just Prince George, but in northern British Columbia, which is a vast geographical area.
Over the last 30 years.
Yes, since 78 till I retired in 2014, so it was
Yeah.
over 30 years.
Yeah. So it then became, so the whole northern British Columbia was still in its early stages, really. We had a very vibrant forest industry, mining around us. Tumbler Ridge was an example of it, but other mining opening up in the north. But relatively speaking, it was still frontier.
Very much so, and a lot of our early work was developing infrastructure throughout northern BC.
Right.
Small towns and villages, again, putting in water systems and sewer systems. Way north to Fort Nelson, which is 1,000 miles north of here.
Yeah.
Going west to Prince Rupert, which is 500 miles west. It was a huge geographical area, lots of traveling.
So for the guest watching us from around the world, saying, my God, British Columbia is a big, big province. And as I said at the introduction, we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers, but it puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, to the east and west, the north and the south.
Right, yes.
And so northern British Columbia is that most of the population is in the south and the below Hope, or the mountain range, and then on Vancouver Island and the Vancouver Island, Victoria, Vancouver, and the lower part of British Columbia, then the Kootenays and the Okanagan. But northern BC, for all intents and purposes, still, relatively speaking, is frontier.
Yes.
It's still an area of huge opportunity. It's beautiful in terms of all the lakes and the land, the nature. We can drive out of here, we can see black bears, we see moose, we see all of that. You know, that
Yes.
it is nature as best as you can. And Prince George is really, I call it the center of British Columbia, but also I call it the main city in northern BC, the capital of northern British Columbia. About 80,000 people and still evolving as we speak.
Yes, totally agree with all of that. People don't realize the vastness of our province. Canada is a huge country. BC is one of 10 provinces, but British Columbia is a huge landmass in its own right. For example, British Columbia is bigger than the UK. It's almost half the size of Europe, including Holland, where you're from. And
yes.
It's a vast province.
Yeah, and absolutely fabulous and beautiful. We fly around a lot. I fly around a lot. Every time I fly around, I sit by the window, I look outside, I say, it's paradise. It is paradise.
Yeah.
And we are so lucky, so fortunate, especially now with all the things going on in the world, Europe, Ukraine, Middle East, and all those problems, and then say how fortunate we are to be Canadians living here in this beautiful, beautiful land,
Yes.
in this beautiful, beautiful province.
Yep.
Now, with all my fellow Canadians, I had the experience of not being here, being born during the war years, and you were born in Scotland and England, that were all part of all of that, or the aftermath of it, is that a lot of times, with all due respect, I don't think that we always appreciate how fortunate we are collectively. I do because of my background. You do because of your background, and you know. So, and then the opportunities it offered when you started here. So now you were in the mid '80s, and L&M Engineering, and you were one of the principals and the president of the company most of the time that I know of it. And we first met in the early 90s, I believe.
Correct, yes. About 35 years ago, I believe.
Yeah, and so, and I was then well, much younger than I am today. So today I'm approaching 84. So I must have been 49. I was in, that young age.
Yeah.
And I started my company in 1975. So I was trying to build a value-added manufacturing company and do a number of other things, including land development. And it's always been part of what I do. I have 3 silos. The one is lumber, the other silo is warehousing, distribution, and logistics, and the other silo is real estate, residential, not so a bit of a challenge most of the times, commercial and industrial. So those are the silos, and you've been very involved with us on numerous projects, mainly real estate, but also in the warehousing side, been expanding our warehousing to becoming one of the larger warehousing groups in northern British Columbia. Yeah.
What has impressed me about you, rather than, in addition to the forestry, which is your base, your roots, you've always had that vision of the future of the city. What does the city need in terms of residential development, warehousing, commercial development? Your vision is amazing, and don't ever stop.
No. And then the other part, David, the same as you, and you've been alongside of me for a long time and being very collectively very active. It's our background to a certain extent, and communities and culture and all the things around it. I'm thinking about the University of Northern British Columbia, for years and years already, the most popular small university in Canada.
Yep.
I had the opportunity of being very involved in that. You were very involved in that. The other one is the College of New Caledonia,
Yes.
that we are proud of, and that has become a center here in Prince George, but also in northern British Columbia, where it has all kinds of other silos that are part of the College of New Caledonia, same as the University of Northern British Columbia. And so as we speak and go forward, seeing that happening, and making it more attractive to more capital investment and growing not only the community but the region in northern BC.
Right. Now that I'm retired or semi-retired, I could choose to live anywhere in the world that I would want to live. I could go back to Scotland, I can go back to Jamaica, I can live in the States, someplace really nice. But upon reflection, Maggie and I decided that Prince George's has been good to us. It has everything that we need. A large part of our family is still in Prince George, so we chose to live in Prince George.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. We're part of the community. I'm a huge part of the local soccer community. All my 4 kids played soccer in Prince George. They got their education in Prince George. They went to the university in Prince George. Prince George is now home to us. I'm not going anywhere else in the world except for the odd vacation.
Now, you have 4 children.
Yes.
So 2 daughters, 2 sons. Tell us about your family. Obviously, I've known Maggie for a very long time. So, but in particular, the children.
Well, as an engineer, I like to be very organized with family matters.
Yeah.
I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. I have 10 grandchildren, 5 boys and 5 girls.
Oh my God.
Totally organized.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
But one piece of advice is when you're growing up and you have kids and the kids move out of the house, make sure they move to someplace really nice.
Yeah.
So I've got 1 child in Victoria, where you live.
Yeah.
My older son. My older daughter lives in Hawaii, which is great for winter vacations.
Yeah, and you take advantage of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also have a younger daughter who is a kindergarten teacher, just like her mum used to be.
in Prince George?
She is in Prince George.
Yeah.
In fact, she's in the very same classroom that her mum used to teach in our neighborhood. It's just that continuity.
Yeah.
And then I have a younger son who's also a very prominent person in Prince George. And it's great.
Yeah.
Half of
and
my
so what
grandchildren.
is his name, the younger fellow's name?
The younger fellow's name is Scott.
Scott, okay, that's a nice
He
name.
is huge into social media. He's probably more famous in Prince George than even I am. I used to introduce Scott as my son, but now he introduces me.
Yeah. So he works, Scott has been with the Brink group of
Yes.
companies for the last 10 years. He is right hand to me, and on the media side, in particular, in one of our executives in the Brink group of companies, and so that is Scotty. And so at the same time, just coming back to your family, is that even at your age and stepping back from L&M Engineering as a large organization and leaving it as a very, very, you can be very, very proud of that. It's a building here, actually, I don't know if we have a picture of it, I think on the screen, that the building that you already had in the early 90s, I think.
Yes.
Now, the interesting part about it is that if you would have had that in 1965 when I came off the bus of the Greyhound with my, could speak language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job, with my $25.47, it would have been right across from that.
Right.
So, interesting. But, but you were not ready to retire, and so now you're working more as a consultant and selectively choose projects and companies that you want to work with. Obviously, you're also still part of the Brink team of companies, and we're doing a lot of stuff, in particular, again, on real estate and those kind of things. But also, I like your input from a management perspective. You are obviously have an amazing background and rely on feedback that comes from you, and I do that in my company and the style of operations that I do. I would say you cannot soar like an eagle if you work with a bunch of turkeys. So you have to have a good team around you to be successful.
Team was very important. I was very careful in choosing people that came to work for me.
Right.
I didn't always choose the most attractive resume but I chose the best people who could actually work together as a team. Retirement is another interesting topic. I retired in 2014, almost exactly 10 years ago. And retirement was something I'd been looking forward to without really knowing what retirement was. So I stopped working for L&M Engineering. I had a great succession plan. The company continues with the people that I'd hired, still doing great. So my vision of retirement was, it's time to have fun. Do some traveling, which I did. It was time to play golf every day, which I did. And I kept telling myself, I'm having a great time. But in reality, I was playing golf, making friends, having the occasional beer. But after 3 or 4 months of this retired life, I felt that there was something missing. And what was missing was the excitement of getting up every morning with things to do, new challenges, and I missed that. I missed the world of working. I missed people more than I thought I ever would. So after 3 or 4 months, I got back into a few select projects with yourself and with other long-term clients, and now I'm happy. I get up in the morning, I have something to do, I have a challenge, I have a meeting, not too many because I'm retired, but it was just different life, and it reminds me a lot of your life. You're still very active, you're far from retirement, you're still working 5 or 6 days a week. But you need that in life. And my advice to young people now growing up is, don't ever retire.
Right.
If you love what you're doing, don't stop. You'll never have a boring day at work if you love what you're doing.
That kind of reminds me of, when you say that, is that amazingly I'm also an author, and I wrote a book about that, is the finding your passion. Living the dream. And the reason that I wrote it is that I do a lot of presenting to younger people in high schools or college universities, and a lot of times I ask them respectfully, what do you plan to do? Say, oh, I don't know. So maybe, respectfully, start talking to people that are in different careers. You want to be a truck driver, talk to a truck driver. See how it works. If you want to be a contractor, talk to contractors building houses or whatever you think of, or maybe you want to be a lawyer, talk to lawyers or doctors, or for that matter, CEOs, entrepreneurs. Most of them will accept you calling them and saying, this is what I'm thinking about, could you be helpful?
Yeah.
Most of them would be.
Absolutely, yes.
And then, so that's what I recommended. And then the other thing I heard on the one of the television channels in the United States is that they said of the people that are working in the United States, 75% of them don't particularly like their jobs.
Wow.
And 70% of that 75% are looking for another job. Hence, I said, I'm going to have to write a book about that. So then that's what I did. Finding your passion, living the dream. And so, and a fair question would be, and I think you answered yours already for me, is saying, okay, John, then at nearly 84, are you living the dream? I said, I sure am.
Yeah.
I usually, and then the other part that I say is that, and I have, my employees gave this to me, when I came off the bus just across from your office there, I had $25.47, but what I had lots of is attitude. I avoid negative, and even still today, I did then already then. The other one is passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%. So are you. In work ethic, I work harder than anybody, even at 84, and I get up at 5:30. I always think I'm late, and I always make my bed, and I do.
Yeah.
And then so that's what I love and love to do. And so your comments in terms of I know so many people, they look forward to retirement, but by the time they do it, they say, what do I do now? And so that's not healthy. It's not good for themselves to have a purpose, whatever it may be, that makes you get up in the morning and enjoy the day. Is extremely important.
It also adds to your life expectancy. When you're living the dream, have a challenge every day, mentally you're more alert, and you'll live longer.
Yeah.
The average life expectancy for a civil servant, a retired civil servant, is less than 2 years.
Wow.
Which is scary. I mean, look at you, the way you work. You're now 84, way past retirement age.
Yeah.
I'm 74, past retirement age also.
Yeah.
But still feeling great, staying healthy.
Yeah.
But to me, the secret is having a challenge every single day, mentally alert.
Yeah.
Working hard.
Yeah, and being able to, and then the other part that you're very active in a number of areas. You've been, from right when you were young, you were involved in sports. You played hockey at a very high level, actually, in Scotland, in one of the major teams. Not everybody has that on their resume. And then the other part, you've always been, not untypical for Europeans, including myself, is you're a major fan of soccer and has been very, very involved in Prince George, in the soccer teams and promoting soccer in the city of Prince George, but also as a referee in soccer, you've been very, very involved.
Yeah, that has been a big part of my life. I was on the board of directors for this local soccer association, youth soccer, for more than 20 years. And that all started back when my older daughter was 5 years old. I put her into soccer, thing to do. And they were always looking for coaches, and I volunteered, and they gave you a whistle and a bag of balls, and that's it, very little direction.
Yeah.
So, like everything in life, I decided if I was going to be a soccer coach, I'd better be a good soccer coach.
Exactly.
I took all kinds of courses.
Not untypical of David McWalter, really, yeah. So.
Right. Just being good at what you do. And I became a very high-level soccer coach.
Yeah.
I coached the provincial ladies under 21 team for a couple of years.
Right.
I became what's called technical director of the Prince George Youth Soccer Association. So my role there was not just coaching the kids, but coaching the coaches who coach the kids.
Yeah.
And that took me all over northern British Columbia to Mackenzie, Fort St. John, Prince Rupert, all those places as a coach, coaching other coaches to improve their skills.
You see, and the underlying part of that is, again, your background all the way from the time you were in Scotland, working at a young age, working your way through Jamaica and other places and all this stuff. You became, because that is part of your role, it's not only being a professional engineer, but it's even equally important there, that is not necessarily taught in universities, becoming a good communicator. And that is critical in areas of being a referee at the level that you were at, because communications is critical. It's the next book that I'm going to write, actually, on communications, that's coming out in 2026.
That could be an interesting book in my case.
Yeah.
The communication of giving people a red card or a yellow card on the soccer field.
Yeah, but that's the other part of being good communicators, right? So saying, so now the other part, that I've always wanted to ask you for the last 30 years, and I didn't do that, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so I don't know how to do this, actually. Let me think about it. I got it now. Do you have a middle name?
Yes, I do. In fact, it's a middle name that we share. So we both have the name of John. Yours is up front in lights at the front of your name. To me, it's a little bit hidden in the middle of my name.
Yeah.
It's David John McWalter.
There we go.
And I have no idea where that name came from. My parents, obviously, but it's not a family name or... Yeah, but it's there.
So it's interesting. So we share that in a way. So my name is somewhat interesting as well. I was born as Jan, Jan.
Right. Yeah.
And my middle name is Arend, Arend.
Yep.
Brink, obviously Brink. And so Jan, very common name in Holland. In Germany, to a certain extent, Scandinavian countries. When I came here, and I couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, and was piling lumber and be a cleanup man, they said, what's your name? It said Jan. Oh, hi, John, how are you doing? And so it was always John, and so at last, okay, whatever, right? So I'll be John. And
so your birth certificate is still Jan?
That's interesting that you say that, because I'm having I get a Netflix card, that for getting to the airport quicker, Nexus.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And so that is approved by the Americans, and so they put it through the American system, but they put in there your birth name. So there I have Jan. That sometimes gives me a bit of a challenge, but not usually when I explain it. But in Canada, my official name is John,
Wow.
And so the other part was interesting is that I always admired the eagles here, and I've worked with First Nations in the Yukon for 5 years, and at a sawmill there, and 90% of our employees were First Nations.
Right.
But also here, and the indigenous people have a special respect for eagles.
Yeah.
And so I developed that as well, and it is one of my favorite birds.
Yeah.
My middle name is Arend.
Right.
Which means eagle.
Oh.
In Dutch. Arend is Dutch. Yeah. So that's the interesting part about it.
You've always had that connection with eagles. I remember the eagle that used to park on a tree just on the west end of your property.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always did that. I developed it then as I find it an amazing and special feeling for nature, for one, but eagles take a special over.
Right.
It's not just because it's coincidence more than anything else. So that then being said is that, if you look forward now, you're now in the ideal position where you're still working actively but do not have the larger pressure of of companies, because what you have in companies, it can be very demanding at times. I have done that in a way too, and you did that with L&M. Prepare the company, get a management team in place that allows you to kind of step back in a gradual way, and then do things that you like to do more. And so what I've done is, I had over the years, I had numerous people say to me, and probably including you at times, is saying, you should write a book about this. And so I tried to do that for the last 25, 30 years. I stopped, and I start. And then I knew about 5, 6 years ago that if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I want to write a book about, and the book that I did write is Against All Odds. And it's not about hoorah, hoorah, how successful John is, just the opposite.
Yeah.
It's going through all the ups and downs,
Right.
in falling, dusting off, staying the course, never give up. So it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. Quite successful, actually.
That's one of my favorite books. It talks about your highs and your lows. It's kind of inspirational in lots of ways. Never give up. Even when you lose, it's a lesson. Use it, move forward.
Yeah, and then stay the course. It's so, and it was not always easy, and you've been there, I've been there, obviously. And then the other part that I'm uniquely different from you is that you are meticulous in the things that you do. You have an engineering mindset that makes you special as to who you are and what you do, and valuable for us as a company. This is a shock for all the people that are listening. I'm just kidding, because most of them know already. So in 1997, what happened here in Prince George, I was not successful academically. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And they said to my parents, what you gonna do, And then they recommended, my parents were beautiful people, so they recommended, say, maybe send them to the mentally challenged school. Say, no, we're not going to do that. We'll teach them a trade. Now, my dad was in the lumber business. My grandfather was a master carpenter, and so they sent me to a furniture factory at 13, and then I became a furniture maker. And then the other thing that happened to me, on April the 12th, 1945, we were liberated by the Canadian Army, and I always knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And then the other dream that I had is build a lumber mill. And then the other one that I had, I always felt I had still failed. It didn't totally hold me down. I still had attitude, passion, work ethic, and entrepreneurial things, but I kind of felt that all that my friends that went to college, university, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it wasn't. And so it took me 32 years when I was here, already 1965, to when I walked into the store, Books on 3rd, the one where it is. I went in the store, I picked up a book, Driven to Distraction. I don't know why I did it. And I opened the book, and it was about ADHD, and I said, oh my God, now I know who I am. And I wrote in Dutch because I was ashamed of it. For one, it was implied that it was a mental issue, maybe, and I wrote in Dutch, now I finally know who I am. And then the more I found out about it, the more I found that the frequency of occurrence was indicated in Google and all the other places to be about 8% of the population.
Whoa! Yeah.
But the more I looked at it, the more I found that it was much higher than that. And then it took me 5 years till I was 62 years old that I went to my doc, Dr. Carey, then was my doc, delivered our 2 daughters and was a friend. And I walked into his office and he said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. So we did, and I do. Anyway, so the more I looked at it, the more I felt I had to be more public about it, and then I felt I had to write a book about it, and I did that. So I wrote ADHD Unlocked, which is somewhat unique. Now, our podcast is, I believe, 255. I had to kind of look because, so podcast number 203 is with Dr. Helliwell, the one that wrote the book about Driven to Distraction in 1993, and I bought the book in 1997. And so I still have the book, I still had it signed, and I podcasted Dr. Helliwell in podcast number 203. And so as we had the discussion, very popular podcast actually, around the world, as we had our discussion, I suggested to him that my opinion is that, and he wrote 18 books, 5 on distraction, is a doctorate ADHD. And so as we had the interaction, I said to him that I believe that although I got the indication initially of 8% of the population ADHD, that I believe it was more closer to 20. He said, no, John, it's over 25%.
Whoa.
I agree with him.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that we talked about is saying that ADHD, that among CEOs and entrepreneurs, and the operative is the successful ones, at least I said to him, 50% from my experience are ADHD. He said, no, John, at least 75%. And I agree with him.
Crazy, yeah.
So what I'm saying about the book, not only my book, but there's lots of books about it, more popular now, accepted to be not a disorder. It's not a liability. It could well be an asset. I call it superpower. People say to me, how do you do all the things that you're doing? At 84 years old, you're writing books and you're managing companies and you're podcasting and you do how do you do it all? I say ADHD, that's how. So the other part about ADHD is I think that it's not only those that have ADHD, but also affiliated issues in medically that may benefit from books like this, but also people that are affected by trauma and are not good at the normal system of teaching that we have, where you sit in a schoolroom for the 4 years and about a whole lot of things where you're only interested in the narrow part, which is typical for ADHD. We easily get distracted, but we're very good on issues that require superpower and where we can really focus in on.
Right.
You know, and I say, and then in addition to that, the population as a whole, I easily, and so does Dr. LOL, at least saying more than 75% of entrepreneurs and more than 25% of the population in general, that probably is around 30% of the population, ADHD. So what I say is, even for those that are not directly affected, but they will find people in their circle, family or friends, or in society in a general way, to read a book about ADHD, you understand better, respectfully, the mind of ADHD and why they do what they do, or why don't they do what they do. And so to read the book give people in a general sense a better understanding. You know.
Those are amazing statistics, and as a side story, my life is about to be changed fairly dramatically by ADHD, but not in the way you would expect. One of my grandchildren, who lives in Hawaii, has similar learning issues, similar issues at school, and he has had amazing help and assistance through his elementary school years in Hawaii. But this is the year, this summer, he transitions from elementary school to high school. So I'm going there to be a granddad this September, this fall, to stay in Hawaii for 4 months for his first few months at school.
Yeah.
Hawaii is not a bad place to visit for 4 months.
Especially
but I'm going to be there to make sure that he adapts well to his new high school environment. Instead of jumping across the fence to his elementary school, He now has a 20-minute drive. He has to be driven to school. That's going to be me. He has to be picked up from school in the afternoon. That will be me. And I'll be there to just make sure that he's integrated well into the school, that he's not picked on, not bullied. So I'm going to be a granddad for 4 months starting in September.
Yeah.
Because of ADHD.
Yeah. Amazing, huh?
Yeah, it's just different.
And it's, but I say, and that's why I'm so public about it and wrote about it, is that, that I believe it is an asset and a superpower. The reason that I say it's a superpower is simply to remove the stigma that you can do anything. Yep. It is not a liability. Yep. It is not a distraction or a negative in any form, but it has great potential to bring you to where you want to go. And to understand that even from a younger age, that it is not a liability is very, very important, because what I found is that in my case, from the time that I was 13 to the time that I was diagnosed when I was 62,
wow.
For 50 years, this was in my system. It didn't totally slow me down, but it was still there, and a lack of confidence in a lot of areas that once I got to know that, it allowed me to open the abilities that I do have, and then from there on in, I'm a late bloomer. I started writing, started speaking more, doing podcasting, doing all the other things that normally, like Toastmasters helped me a great deal. Yep. I'm a distinguished Toastmaster, but I could not have done what I did, including without Toastmasters, of becoming an in-demand public speaker and doing podcasting to the level that I do, and be probably one of the most active podcasters in Canada. Over the last 2 years, we had up to 20 million views.
Huge, yeah.
And I love it, but the point is that writing books and with failing grade 3 and failing grade 7, the point that I'm simply making, I'm not suggesting that others do, but to change the learning system to adapt it for people that are, for whatever reason, not only ADHD and maybe trauma or other reasons, to assist them through that will have a great effect on life. Because that, and what I say to young people in particular, to have the feeling we are all uniquely special. There's only one of us on this earth. Mm-hmm. And believe in yourself, believe that you are special, and that anything you want to accomplish, that is available to us, especially in North America. And if you're willing to put in the effort in all the other things, but do not view it as a liability.
Right. And you're a shining example of what you can achieve with your superpower.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So, that then being said, David, what did we miss so far?
We skipped a lot of years. It's a long-term friendship. We've done a lot of things together.
Yeah.
Not just on a work basis, but some of the areas in the city that you have supported, like hospice. You're a huge supporter of the Prince George Hospice Society, as was I. Working hard, helping them fund their projects, helping them design and build their homes.
𝗙𝗡 Nature Park.
𝗙𝗡 Nature Park is another classic one. I have the greatest admiration for Jim Good, as do you. And I'm so thrilled that he's being recognized by the University of Northern British Columbia. And on May 31st, he gets his honorary degree for the work that he's done establishing this nature park in Prince George.
From the ground up.
Which is a great gift to the community. And
absolutely. And then it also leaves the message behind between yourself, myself, is that, and that's what I say wherever the opportunity presents itself, is that why do we do what we are doing, as being so involved in the communities, is that that is part of my life. That's always what we did, and always wherever we can, be supportive, we donate if we have availability, but at least we are involved in community. Community is critical.
Yes,
and
definitely.
then the other part, as I said earlier, is that with the experience that you have had, I have had, to share that with young people in particular on the soccer fields or wherever it may be, and speaking what I do is to create that feeling of confidence in young people, is that do not get preoccupied of things that are not important, that you cannot afford the most beautiful clothes or whatever it is for guys or girls, and that you don't quite look the way you think you should be. Do not preoccupy you. You are unique.
Yes.
And get that feeling of confidence that you can do it, and if you are willing to put in the effort. There's so many people that don't feel good about themselves, unfortunately, and I'm suggesting that, like in my life, where I was part of the invasion of Holland and saw all the bombers overhead, that the sound is still with me, hundreds of bombers. And then obviously the hunger winter of 1944-45, where we had no food, and that it was the coldest winter on record, that with my sister and my brother, we every morning, the three of us would go with gunny sacks into the railroad yards, pick up anything edible and burnable.
Yes.
And then obviously saw far too much during the liberation of Northern Holland, saw dead bodies and all things that we should not have seen, that always kind of stayed with me. And I still feel the feeling of hunger, and was affected by PTSD, including the inner child. And the inner child, I got counseling for well into my 50s. That little boy, in 4 and 5 years old, that still was there and had not reconciled. Very emotional, actually, but very helpful in a way as well. And all that background and all that experience, it lays the foundation, including the opportunity of attitude, passion, work ethic, and then look outside and say, we are the luckiest people in the world living in this beautiful country, this beautiful province, with all the opportunities. And then having, obviously, showing passion for all the challenges that are going on around the world. But count ourselves lucky.
I agree with you. Prince George is one of the greatest places to live on this planet. It has everything that you could possibly want. You're surrounded by nature. It's a great community, and community is the key word.
Correct.
It's a community of entrepreneurs, hardworking people.
Yeah.
I find the attitude of people in Prince George to be supportive in what I do.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm doing in retirement now is doing a lot of pro bono work for people who want to be a developer, people who may have 10 acres and want to learn how to subdivide or build a house.
Yeah.
I offer them free advice, I meet with
Very
them,
rewarding,
help them.
right?
Oh, it's great, to see their enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. David, it was a pleasure.
Likewise.
And,
we've known each other for 35 years, but we've never had this candid conversation.
No, and that again for our guest, David is a unique individual, as you well noticed already, and to share with his life as well as my life, and seeing me, for those guests that are subscribers to our podcast, 270,000 of them, or somewhere in that vicinity, to get a closer look on the friendship that we have and that have worked together for the last 30 years. I hope it's an inspiration for a lot of people, and especially young people, in terms of opportunity. And again, thank you for watching. If you have an opportunity, make sure you subscribe to our podcast thing to see more programs of all different descriptions. Like us and make comments. Again, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah.